143 days since Temple's last win, and Stan Drayton got his first win as a collegiate head coach, a 16-point win over the Lafayette Leopards.
And later on, we'll hear from Dave Revson, the lead studio host for the Big Ten Network, on his thoughts ahead of Temple's matchup with Rutgers.
And I'm Sam Massid. Coming up, I'll break down some Saturday evening storylines from the Owls home opener.
And I'm Jake Gable, live outside of Edberg Olson Hall. A new quarterback took the field for Temple, E.J. Warner. We'll talk about a changing of the guard. Inside the Nest is live, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome on into Inside the Nest. He's Luke and Emilie. I'm Emily Cochran. There's a home game in the books, a check in the win column, and a lot to break down over the next 45 minutes.
A matchup with an FCS opponent like the Lafayette Leopards was exactly what the Owls needed to break their 8-game losing streak, the longest active streak in the country. In the first of 4 games against Cat mascots this season, the Owls were on the prowl early. On the first drive of the day, DeJuan Mathis drops a 29-yard pass down the sideline into the breadbasket of Jose Barbone for a big gain. One play later, Darvon Hubbard scoots into the end zone for his first touchdown as an Owl. And it was also Temple's first score in the opening quarter in 364 days. Later in the quarter, Mathis loses his first of 2 fumbles in the game. It's the second straight week Temple has fumbled twice. The Leopards make the Owls pay. Ryan Schuster finds Julius Young in the end zone to tie the game at 7. Stan Drayton had enough of the turnovers. He sends in true freshman QB E.J. Warner, and Warner wasted no time. He completed 3 of his first 4 passes, capping off his opening drive with a 15-yard touchdown pass to Ian Stewart to put the Owls ahead 14-7.
And after the Owls' second touchdown, the Leopards go in for the punt, but Devon Fox gets around and hits it with his fingertips to block it. This sets the Owls in great field positioning on their offensive 21-yard line and eventually leads to an Edward Sadie 9-yard run straight into the end zone. After halftime, the Leopards start off strong, striking back in the third quarter with this 5-yard touchdown to Mason Gilbert to make it a 21-14 game. And then, we've seen it once, let's see it again. Devon Fox does not let up. This was his second of 3 blocked punts of the day. He was actually named AAC Special Teams Player of the Week because of his remarkable efforts. Now to end the game, Warner throws to Jordan Smith for the Owls' last touchdown of the day. And to top it all off, Devon Fox gets his third blocked punt of the day. That led to a safety which ended in a game 30-14. Temple wins it all in week 2.
Credit where credit's due. They came out to play. I think that we stepped up as a team and just did our job, but then it slipped a little bit in the second half.
I was very proud all around with the whole defense. Like, we played as one, played together, and got the job done.
And for some time there, we felt Lafayette had the momentum going. The penalties for the 4 turnovers are just shining so bright in my head right now, and those are the things that lose ball games usually, So, yeah, the fact that we're not, that we don't have a double-edged sword that way is pretty cool. But the fact that we got, 4 times we're turning the ball over to the other team is not very good.
The running game got going against the Leopards. The Temple running backs combined for 141 yards on the ground against Lafayette after producing just 33 yards rushing last week against Duke. But the story of the game was true freshman quarterback E.J. Warner coming into the game and throwing for 173 yards, the most by a Temple quarterback in their debut performance in team history.
Now, as a true freshman quarterback, it doesn't hurt having a Hall of Famer as a dad. E.J. Warner has grown up with Kurt Warner as his father. And could you ask for a better mentor? Kurt tweeted out to his son mid-game saying, quote, "There's nothing better than watching your kids shine." He also added the hashtag TempleTough, showing his support for the Owls during their Week 2 matchup. Such wholesome content right there. I mean, what more could you ask for, Luke? But yeah, E.J. Warner, definitely the story of the game right there. We know DeJuan Mathis had a rough first quarter at the start of that game. He fumbled the ball twice. So Stan Drayton decided to put E.J. in, and as a true freshman quarterback, I mean, he did great. Threw for 173 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he completed 73% of his passes. I mean, from a true freshman quarterback who stepped in such a pressured situation, what more could you ask for from him?
He was certainly the story of the game, but if there had to be a story number 2, you mentioned it in the highlight, it was Devon Fox. 3 blocked punts in this game. That's a Temple record. Fox is 1 shy of the NCAA record for block punch, which is 4. But you know what's cool? The most blocked punts by a team in the country right now is 2. Devon Fox individually has 3. He is more than any team in the country. But another thing that sticks out to me for Fox is he's a guy at the receiver position that's just not getting a lot of time, but he's still going out and making the most of his opportunities on special teams where he has been able to get on the field.
Absolutely, and let's talk about this overall defense. Now, obviously, we see that they improved drastically from week 1 to week 2. Obviously, there were still some missed tackles, still some self-inflicted mistakes there. But overall, the difference between week 1 and week 2 there, it's incredible. They had 8 total sacks. As you mentioned, Devon Fox with the 3 blocked punts. First of all, that's like completely unheard of in college football, having 3 blocked punts in one game. Like, he had an incredible day, that Devon Fox. But yeah, I think, it's not about these leaps and bounds. Like, you don't want to take, we know that Temple isn't going to be great week after week. They're not even, set to be good. But as long as we see these progressions throughout each week, that's all Stan Drayton can really ask for from this team that's still building from the ground up.
When you talk about progressions from a group, look at the running back room as well. Temple had 2 running backs with over 50 yards rushing in this game. Edward Sadie, Darvon Hubbard. They really got going against Lafayette. But also what I like to see out of the running game was the style, the balance in the offense. The Owls ran the ball so much more. They had 3 guys with 10-plus carries in this game with Sadie, Hubbard, and Jakari Norwood. So I think this is what Stan Drayton wants to trend towards, and it's really important if you're running with a freshman quarterback like E.J. Warner to have that balance to help the offense flow a little bit better.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. But this week 2 matchup against the Leopards ended a 364-day streak since the Owls scored in the first quarter. Thankfully, right before the 1-year anniversary. For more on this, we send it over to Inside the Nest reporter Sam Massad to break it all down. Hey, Sam.
Thanks, Emily. Saturday was a turn of events for the Owls with their win over Lafayette. Temple scored their first points of the season early on in the game thanks to redshirt sophomore Darvon Hubbard. Not only this, but it was the Owls' first score on their opening drive since November 7, 2020 against number 18th ranked SMU. A 673-day streak finally snapped. This is a step in the right direction for Temple, considering they've been outscored 108-14 in the first quarter since 2021. Moving on to star receiver of the game, Jose Barbone, who racked up 118 yards this past weekend. This is the second straight game where he led the team in receiving yards. He was tied for first with the most catches last season alongside Randall Jones. If he keeps up these stats, Barbone's on the right track to becoming wide receiver 1. Reporting from the studio set, I'm Sam Massad. Back to you guys on desk.
Sam broke down the hot start and some wide receiver success. So now Emily and I have some special teams and quarterback moments on this week's Play Breakdown.
All right, Luke, we talked about Devon Fox and his 3 blocked punts of the game, so let's play it right here. Let's watch it. Here we go. Obviously, this is going to start right now. Devon Fox gets completely open. Boom! Out. Right there, as you can see, this sets the Owls up for great field positioning right on their 21-yard line. But let's take a closer look at this. Stop it right here. You can see Temple has 3 guys stacked on this line. Only 2 Lafayette guys are set to block, so Devon Fox is going to have a clear route to block this punt. You can play it right now. He gets through right here, completely untouched. Boom! Right there. As you can see, after this, Edward Sadie rushes in for a 9-yard running touchdown to put the Owls up 21-7 leading into the third quarter.
I love that. Boom! Here's another boom coming up. It's E.J. Warner. This is something that he and Temple fans will never forget. It's his first career touchdown pass into the back of the end zone to Ian Stewart right near the end of the first half to put Temple ahead by 7, a lead they would never lose. So now let's watch it again. E.J. takes the snap. Snap it right here. You can see there's a bit of a miscommunication up top. First, E.J. Warner has all the protection in the world down here. This is the most protection he had all day. Adam Klein doing a nice job as the right tackle to keep his man off. But up top, there's 3 Owls against 2 Leopards. That's a mismatch. They have this guy up here at the 10-yard line has to pick between Adonicus Sanders streaking to the end zone or Ian Stewart streaking behind him. And then over at the 15-yard line, the defender has to decide if he's going to take Jakari Norwood in the flat or Ian Stewart up top. So now you can play it again. That defender gets caught in no man's land. All E.J. Warner has to do is deliver the pass, and deliver the pass he did. He finds Ian Stewart in the end zone, and a nice athletic play from Ian Stewart, a guy that was older as a tight end when he was at Michigan State, now making the transition to wide receiver in a Temple uniform. Now, as mentioned, Saturday marked the first collegiate action for true freshman E.J. Warner. Although he came into the game 4th on the depth chart, the son of a former Hall of Fame quarterback was ready when his number was called. Inside the Nest reporter Jake Gable has more on Warner's unexpected debut.
Thanks, Luke. Going into the Lafayette game, Temple dressed 4 quarterbacks, 3 of whom had prior college football experience. So it came to a surprise to many when the one who didn't, true freshman E.J. Warner, took the field.
Halfway through the second quarter, the score sat at 7-7. The Temple offense had been struggling ever since their opening drive score. And after the second fumble of the game by starting quarterback DeJuan Mathis, head coach Stan Drayton decided it was time for a change.
This is E.J. Warner in at quarterback, the son of legendary quarterback Kurt Warner.
Yes.
Taking snaps here for Temple in the second quarter.
And that change was putting in true freshman E.J. Warner, who would have an immediate impact on the game.
Making his college debut, there was a clear shift in the offense when Warner came in at quarterback. In his first ever drive, he would end the drive with a touchdown pass to Ian Stewart.
Warner's final stat line would end with him throwing 14 for 19 with 173 yards and 2 touchdowns, and most importantly, leading Temple to their first win of the season.
You know, but what EJ represents, quite honestly, is when we sit there and we talk about an opportunity to help the team win.
Warner's play definitely stood out to those watching, but for Warner's teammates in the huddle with him, the thing that stood out to them was the true freshman's poise.
Seemed like a true freshman to me, but everybody's ready when their number is called to do their job, and EJ really stepped up today.
With E.J. Warner being moved up to the QB1 position on the depth chart, it is very likely he will make his first start this Saturday against Rutgers.
Comparing stats from previous Temple QB debuts, Warner stands out from the rest. Warner's 2 touchdowns are more than both DeJuan Mathis's debut in Week 1 of last season and Anthony Russo's debut in 2018 against Maryland. Mathis and Russo also both threw 1 interception, while Warner did not commit a turnover. Warner's favorite target was Jose Barbone. The two connected on 6 passes for 82 yards. While 1 half of football is a very small sample size, we will learn a lot more coming this Saturday. I'm Jake Gable, live outside of Edberg Olson Hall. Luke and Emilie, back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks, Jake. It's break time. Next up, we'll hear from head coach Stan Drayton on Temple's first win of the season.
We'll also hear his thoughts on E.J. Warner and a look ahead to Rutgers when Inside the Nest returns. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Stan Drayton's weekly press conference featured a lot of questions about the new man under center, true freshman quarterback E.J. Warner.
Yup, not only that, but he also talks about DeJuan Mathis's reaction to moving down on the depth chart and what he hopes to see from his team moving into Week 3.
Yeah, I guess we'll start off by I'm proud of how our kids responded off of Week 1. You know, we talked specifically about some of the things that we really needed to work on and to change the narrative of the end result that we had at Duke. And really worked. We had a really great week of work last week that had them prepared to play this game against Lafayette, and a lot of that hard work showed up in their play. They were able to cut it loose. They played with good energy, and it's definitely something that we can build on moving forward. Super excited about moving forward this week. We're in homecoming, and it's a very special week for our president, Dr. Wingard, who's in his inauguration as president of this university, and should be special as far as the environment is concerned and things of that sort, and ready to get back into Lincoln Financial and hopefully put a good display of football out there for our fans. So excited.
As you watched film of EJ from Saturday, what did you see beyond, just have more time to look at what he did? What did you think about
Really proud of the way he handled the pressure. He didn't flinch. He went out there and executed the offense. Didn't try to step outside himself. Went out there and put the ball where it needed to be put. Took some hits, responded to those hits, and very excited about what he's capable of doing moving forward. He has a very high ceiling as a player and still has a lot to learn. But to be able to get on the stage when this number was called and to be prepared was something that we're excited about. Very poised and did his job.
Rutgers is another team that they're playing multiple quarterbacks. What do you see in those guys, and how do you got to prepare for different skill sets in those guys?
Yeah, both Wimstad and Simon, very talented football players. They both bring their own little strength and weaknesses to the game. I see a lot of strength, not a whole lot of weakness, but Wimstad, being the bigger of the two, can play with his feet. When he decides to run the football, you're looking at a 6'3", 220-pound ball carrier that you gotta tackle him. Simon's a guy who manages the pass game really well, throws with good accuracy, but also when it's time for him to use his feet, he's very effective. They're very multiple formationally. They do a lot of creativity in the run game that gets guys open into space. When the run game kind of, I shouldn't say shut down because it hadn't shut down, but they complement their run game really well with being able to get the ball in space to their wide receivers, RPOs. And not only that, they have a tight end, number 21, Langan, I think it is, no disrespect. Very talented, lines up and gets the ball at Wildcat. Very versatile football player. Is really going to force us to lock in, get lined up, stay true to our keys, be very disciplined, and still be able to cut it loose and tackle them in space and tackle their athletes in the run game. We have to be very physical up front with this unit, so we got a nice challenge ahead of us.
Has DeJuan's sort of reaction in the 48 hours since then been what you hope or expect to get a hold?
DeJuan's been phenomenal. He's a guy who wants to win. He's all about winning, and he trusts us as a coaching staff that we're going to put our players in the proper position to win. And so when things weren't quite going his way, his response wasn't that of disappointment. It was that of, okay, who's the next man in and what can I do to help him have success for the team to have success? So it's been a great response by DeJuan.
That was part one of Stan Drayton's press conference. Luke, what stood out to you?
What stood out to me was the praise for E.J. Warner from Stan. He's not quick to give praise to a lot of people or a lot of position groups, so that stuck out to me, especially with a position group that we've already seen 3 different guys step in this season with DeJuan Mathis, Quincy Patterson, and now E.J. Warner. And I think it's important to hear this praise because we know that the depth chart doesn't mean much to Stan Drayton. He has E.J. Warner up there at QB1 right now, but obviously he's mentioned time and time again that can change in the blink of an eye. So E.J. Warner has to keep stepping up, and he said it was a sign of a good quarterback with how well he was able to take the hits. So I think it's a good sign for E.J. Warner to get that praise from his head coach.
Absolutely, and Stan Drayton talked a lot about DeJuan right there. He said that this specific situation, as a starting QB who started for a few years now, you would expect him to feel defeated taken out of this game, but in reality, when things weren't going his way, his response was, put in the next man. If I can't do this right now, put in EJ. I will help him out if I can do this. And, you know, he said that. Great leadership skills on DeJuan's side. So it's very nice to see that happen there.
So part one featured a lot of talk about the quarterbacks, but in part two, Stan Drayton brings the focus to the rest of the team and talks about the culture being built on North Broad.
Do you plan to have EJ take first team reps this week in practice? I know that last week you mentioned he was with the Qs. How does you see him game?
Yeah, this week he will get some first team reps. He's been getting first team reps. Really, we've been really rotating those quarterbacks in that group. It's really the true evaluation of our quarterbacks is to get them with the ones and to see what they really can do. You know, so he's been getting those reps all along, but he will get more of those reps moving forward.
Very similar to Lafayette, Rutgers really wants to establish the run. They've had very good rushing games the first two games.
Yeah.
What is something that I guess is the most difficult to repeat? You guys did such a good job with the run game against Lafayette. What do you guys want to do to repeat that next week?
Yeah, do another great job against the run. It's something that's unnecessary. If you're going to line up and play with Rutgers, you got to stop their strength, which is their run game. And again, they're very creative in how they go about keeping that fresh and alive during the course of the game formationally, different guys touching the ball, RPO game to keep you honest on defense. They're really good, and they're physical up front. You know, so we've got to get off blocks. We got to stay true to our keys, and we got to trigger. Once we see the ball, we got to get around the ball and tackle the ball.
Stan, how would you evaluate the progress of your running backs from Sadie and those guys had a solid game on Saturday? Are you pleased with where they're trending up so far?
I am pleased. You know, they played hard, they ran hard. At times they played past contact, which is really good. You know, running backs have got to be able to get yards on their own. And I think that's something that is enhancing in that room. And to be able to see it happen from more than just one person is what keeps the run game fresh for us moving forward. Very, very excited about where they're trending right now. And I hope they continue to trend in the right direction.
You mentioned last week you sat down with the leadership committee to evaluate the film from the Duke. Was that something that you did this week as well?
That's something that we do every week. They give me a heartbeat of what's going on in that locker room. I also give them an opportunity to voice their opinions on what can be done better operationally. This is a player-friendly program, and they have the information that's needed that sometimes the coaches don't have, what's going on in that locker room. Now, they're leadership guys because they understand the culture that we're trying to build. You know, sometimes they'll come to you with some demands and some commands that I'm not going to buy into, but as long as it fits the culture, we're going to try to do the best thing that we can, given their opinion and suggestions to make sure that we have a real family environment and a functional environment in this building.
Reflecting on the game on Saturday, that was your first career win. How did you, overall, I know it's just one game, but your emotions, how were your emotions after the game with the win, and how much does it really mean to you to get that first win?
It really feels great to get a win. Very, very realistic on where we need to continue to improve. And we saw some things improve on this past Saturday, and I was excited about that. I was excited to see the young men have fun, play with each other, for each other, play hard for 4 quarters. That's what I was most excited about, because I know those are the things that we can move forward and build a winning program on. There's still a lot of things that we need to continue to work on and improve, and that's what I'm very realistic about. So that being said, I enjoyed it, but I'm back to work, back to the drawing board.
So that was part 2 of Stan Drayton's press conference. Emily, what did you take away from it?
So what he said there at the end, when asked about if he was excited about getting his first collegiate win as a head coach, he said, obviously I'm excited, but I'm more excited for my players right now. I'm excited that they played hard throughout the entire game. I'm excited that they played through each quarter successfully. They didn't slow down. They kept up that momentum. But also he said that excitement can only last so long. Versing Lafayette, it's a lot different than when they're going to go up against Rutgers in week 3. So he recognizes that the excitement is there, and obviously he's excited, but he's got to get back into that game mode moving into Rutgers for week 3.
And I think Coach Drayton has a good heartbeat of this team, and I think that comes from the player leadership committee that he described and how well connected him and the team are and how it's going to build the culture of this team and stop any breaks between the locker room and the coaching staff. And speaking of breaks, we're up against our second break of the day. When we return, we'll hear from an expert on the Owls matchup with Rutgers next week. We're heading to the Big Ten Network for some knowledge.
The Scarlet Knights are coming to Philadelphia and just in time for homecoming. Stick around. Inside the Nest is back right after this. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Temple welcomes Rutgers to the Link this week for the third game of the season. The last time these two teams played, it ended in an ankle injury for DeJuan Mathis in a 64-14 loss. For the 2022 season, the Scarlet Knights are 2-0 right now, dominating in their Week 2 matchup against Wagner, where the team won 66-7.
And in that win, the offense dominated for the Scarlet Knights. Two QBs showed out for Rutgers. Evan Simon threw for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Gavin Wimsett didn't miss a beat either, adding 63 passing yards, 62 rushing yards, along with 1 passing touchdown. Even tight end Johnny Langan came in at QB to end the first quarter. And of course, he fired a 43-yard touchdown for good measure. The Scarlet Knights demolished Wagner and won the game 66-7.
We've watched the film, but now it's time to go in depth with an expert.
Emily and I had the chance to talk with Dave Revson, the lead studio host and a play-by-play announcer for the Big Ten Network, to hear his thoughts on the Scarlet Knights.
All right, so I'll start. The first thing I see when I look at this Rutgers team is that they use 2 quarterbacks. And what I want to know is, do you think this is something they're looking to sustain? Is this their style that they want to go through without the whole season? Or do you think Greg Schiano wants to get to 1 quarterback eventually?
So then it's been Evan Simon and Gavin Wimsett. If it is not a close game, then I would say they continue to work on Wimsett and kind of bring him along. I mean, I think the expectation is he's the quarterback of the future. Again, a really highly touted kid, but I think Simon's the more dependable option right now.
I wanted to talk a little bit about Johnny Langan. He seems like an all-around weapon for this Rutgers offense. In the Wagner matchup, he threw a 43-yard touchdown, but he also recorded his first career receiving touchdown. So Temple's obviously going to have to keep an eye out for this guy, but what makes him such a versatile player in the tight end position?
He's a really interesting guy, Emily. He actually started his career at BC. He transferred to Rutgers as a quarterback and played quite a bit in the last year before Greg Schiano took over as a quarterback and frankly was not good. And they kind of talked him into moving to tight end and becoming kind of a Swiss Army knife kind of guy. So he is one of those guys who you do have to be cognizant of where he is on the field. And he really is. He's just a consummate team guy and a really good football player.
Rutgers started with 28 points in the first quarter against Wagner. Temple isn't known to have, strong starts, but do you expect Rutgers to start off strong against this Week 3 matchup against Temple?
Rutgers will be ready to play. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that has really struck me under Greg Schiano is, look, they are still building to where they want to be, but they play really hard and they are ready to go from the get-go. But I would just say they better be ready to go because Rutgers will be for sure.
We saw this matchup last season, and Rutgers obviously took care of business against Temple in Piscataway. But are there any big changes from Rutgers from last year to this year?
Well, they do have a new defensive coordinator, Joe Harris-Simiak, who came over from Minnesota. But I think, Greg Schiano is a defensive guy, and he has a ton of say into what they're doing defensively. So I would not say that is a hugely significant change. So to me, I think if you saw Rutgers last year, a lot of the same pieces back this year that took care of Temple a season ago.
So now we have some keys for Rutgers, but how about some tools for Temple? Luke, what you got?
My first tool is to protect E.J. Warner. Warner got drilled on a ton of throws this weekend, and to his credit, he stood in and made the plays, which Stan Drayton mentioned. That's the sign of a great quarterback, but he will not make it through a game against Rutgers if he keeps taking big shots on his throws. Now, the O-line will have to collectively step up, especially if right tackle Adam Klein misses this game due to an injury he suffered last week against Lafayette.
Absolutely. And tool number 2, no slow starts. If the Owls can't get any momentum going into the first quarter, they won't be able to recover. In Rutgers' Week 2 matchup. They scored 28 points just in that first quarter. In a football game, the first and fourth quarters are arguably the most important in a football game. The Owls need to start off strong and finish even stronger if they want to compete with the Scarlet Knights come Saturday.
Tool number 3 for Temple is to slow down the Rutgers running game. This is a Scarlet Knights team that has over 500 total rushing yards between their first 2 games. The Temple defense allowed nearly 200 rushing yards to Duke before allowing just under 30 against Lafayette. I don't expect the Owls to completely shut down the run game, but holding Rutgers to under 150 yards rushing is key.
Now, tool number 4, don't give up the pressure. The Owls defense really stepped up last week with 8 sacks and those blocked punts we talked about earlier in the show. The defense cannot let up. It shouldn't matter what team they compete against. They need to stay consistent, composed, and clean. The 3 C's I talked about. Bring the pressure, stop the run game, and interrupt the passing game if you want to compete with the big guys.
And they're going to try that next week, but right now,
tools, tools, and more tools. We'll see if the Owls put them to use on Saturday back at the Link for Week 3. Plus, it's homecoming. Be there or be lonely at 2 p.m. If you can't make the game, you can watch at home on your couch on ESPN+. But always, don't forget to check out our updates on Twitter at OwlSportsUpdate.
Now we're up against another break. When we return, we go no huddle.
Plus, we bring it around broad with some game predictions coming up next.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Emily and I have broken down plays, press conferences, and this week's matchup. So now it's time for us to break down some rapid-fire questions.
It's time to go no huddle.
So the first question is, who do you think should start at quarterback this week?
So for me, I agree with Coach Drayton. It's going to have to be E.J. Warner. Although he's young and less experienced than DeJuan Mathis, there's no doubt that the true freshman was the spark that the team needed in Week 2. I'm just a little concerned he won't be able to handle the pressure Rutgers is going to bring. If anything, they are going to pressure him more knowing he's so new to collegiate football. If he performs the way he did against Lafayette and the O-line can protect him, the Owls might just be able to compete with the Scarlet Knights come Saturday.
And Emily, I'm right with you. It has to be E.J. Warner. He's the only quarterback of the 3 we've seen this season that's shown the ability to handle that pressure you talked about. His 173 passing yards was the most by an Owl since DeJuan Mathis had 183 last October. Stan Drayton said he wants to do what's best for the team, and right now, that's starting E.J. Warner.
All right, question number 2. What team do you think Temple can surpass this season?
Now, I'm going with USF. They were down in the bottom 3 of the AAC preseason poll right with Temple, and this season, the Bulls come to the Link. With teams that'll be battling it out near the bottom of the conference, head-to-head matchups will be crucial in deciding who's on top. I think Temple gets that win at home and ends up ahead of South Florida.
So I'm going to have to go with Navy on this one. They were ranked 10th in the AAC preseason poll, just 1 slot in front of Temple. Not to mention they have already lost against a conference opponent, and that game was against the Memphis Tigers, who outscored Navy 37-13 in Week 2. All right, let's take a look at this updated Rutgers full screen. So here's a quick look at our predictions from last week. Luke, Sam, and Jake are tied up. All are undefeated, while my record sits at 1-1.
We all picked the Owls to win last week against Lafayette, and I had the closest final score at 28-10, but a win is a win for all of us. Now let's take a look at our Week 3 picks.
All right, I've got Rutgers winning 45-7 this week. I think Temple's offense won't be able to compete against a Rutgers defense that's statistically one of the strongest in the country right now, not to mention offensive powerhouse players like tight end Johnny Langan, who are versatile, athletic, and will likely run all over Temple's defense on Saturday.
I'm with you, Emily. I've got Rutgers winning this one 30-10. I think the Owls score multiple times with the run game finding its stride and E.J. Warner making some pressured throws. And although the Owls' D-line got some pressure last week against Lafayette, I think the Rutgers run game that's averaging over 250 yards a game on the ground this season, they're going to have their way with the Owls' defense and control this game. Now, for the second straight week, we've got a sweep in the studio. Let's bring it around broad to see what Sam and Jake think about the matchup with Rutgers.
I'm going to have to agree with you guys. I have the Scarlet Knights taking down Temple 39-10. I'm all for the homecoming atmosphere, especially for the streak they have going, but I really think Rutgers is going to break it. I think the Owls have enough confidence coming off of Lafayette last week to put up a good fight, but as Emily said, if they lose that momentum, it won't be a good look for Temple.
It looks like a clean sweep for all of us because I also have Rutgers in this one, 55-17. We're talking about a Rutgers team that put up 66 points last week and 61 points against Temple in Week 1 of last season. I expect to see more of the team we saw against Duke in Week 1.
All right, thanks guys. It's time for our final break of the day, but don't worry, AAC Talk is on the way.
We'll bring on our final two guests of the show to break down how the rest of the conference is faring through 2 weeks. Inside the Nest, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. We're just 2 games away from conference play, so it's time to see how things are going around the AAC.
Let's take a closer look at the AAC scoreboard from week 2.
The past weekend, 8 of the 11 teams in the American won their matchup, including a game between 2 conference foes, with Memphis roughing up Navy. 7 of the 8 victories for the conference were by double-digit margins as well. After this week, Navy is the only team in the AAC without a win.
Houston also fell for the first time this year. This is a team that is favored to finish first in the American Conference. Texas Tech made the game competitive for the Cougars, and it ended in an overtime 33-30. Overall, Houston, Navy, and UCF were the only teams that lost their matchups in week 2. Now it's time to bring on Owl Sports Update reporter Max Green and our very own Inside the Nest reporter Sam Massad to take a closer look at these AAC teams. Hey guys, what's going on?
Thank you for having us.
So Max, I'm going to start with you. There's no teams ranked in the top 25 in the AAC right now. We saw Cincinnati and Houston both ranked earlier in the season, but they both fell out. What went into their losses over these 2 weeks that knocked them out? And what are some challenges for them going forward?
So there are definitely some challenges for Cincinnati, but I do think they're fixable because 2 of those are that Cincinnati lost a lot of key pieces from last season. Quarterback Desmond Ridder, he's now on the Falcons. Cornerback Ahmad Sauce Gardner, he's playing for the Jets. So there was bound to be a drop-off. But new Cincinnati quarterback Ben Bryant has helped the transition. 500 yards and 5 touchdowns so far. But the defense has kind of been the issue. They've given up 700 yards so far up to this point in the 2 opening games. And with Houston, it's really the same issues. They're putting up 30-plus points a game offensively, but then you look at the defensive side, almost 1,000 yards in just 2 games. Although Houston has been able to keep the games closer. They've been in triple overtime winning against UTSA and losing to Texas Tech in double overtime. The point differential has been no more than 3 though. So I believe Houston's closer to fixing their issues. They just need to fix the defense. Cincinnati, I need to see a bit more. Haven't seen much so far.
And for you, Sam, are there any teams outside of Cincinnati and Houston that could potentially get into the top 25 before the end of the season?
I think probably not likely. You know, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to strength of schedule. If you want to be ranked, especially coming from the American, you have to go in with a clean slate, especially going up against these ranked Power 5 schools. Looking at the AAC right now, we have Tulane and SMU that stay undefeated. Both of them having pretty easy games for their first 2 games, but looking ahead at their schedule, it's a hard road ahead. For example, SMU, they have Maryland this weekend, TCU next weekend, and along with Houston and Cincinnati, it's going to be a struggle for them. I think UCF might compete too, but I don't think it's going to be enough to be ranked, but I think it'll be a competitive AAC conference.
And Max, what are your thoughts? Who do you think could sneak in?
I'm looking at SMU. They're the only undefeated team in the AAC. Granted, they've only played North Texas and Lamar University, but these next 2 weeks, they take on Maryland of the Big Ten and TCU of the Big 12. If the Mustangs can stay undefeated, they can prove themselves as a serious team to watch this season.
Awesome, yeah. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show today, but it's time for us to preview OSU shows.
The show is winding down, but don't worry, we have all the content this week. Owl Sports Update is back again this Thursday with Brielle Berry and AJ Patel at the desk. We've also got our sports brief on Monday on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, we're here every Tuesday with ITN at noon. And that doesn't include all of our social media content at Owl Sports Update. This is the place to be for all things Temple Athletics.
Now from all of us at Inside the Nest, we hope you have a wonderful week. And as always, thank you for tuning in.
For our entire crew, she's Emily Cochran. I'm Luke and Emilie. We'll see you next week.